Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're literally tearing down and reconstructing the psychological framework of highly disciplined people. We're going to dive deep into the exact mechanics of elite self-control. We'll be focusing heavily on things like automaticity, delayed gratification, and honestly, the absolute power of just moving in silence. It's a fascinating topic, so let's get right into it.
Look, you and I have both been sold a very specific, honestly very loud, version of what success is supposed to look like, right? But here's the crazy paradox about true discipline. It's invisible. It's not about waking up at 5 a.m. and immediately posting a selfie so everyone knows you're up. It's not about grinding loudly just to get a pat on the back from your peers. True elite self-control is entirely internal. It completely flips the script on what hustle culture has taught us. And why? Because the most unstoppable people out there are operating on psychological patterns that, well, most of the world just completely misunderstands.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 1, the psychology of quiet intelligence.
Okay, so to really grasp elite discipline, we have to peel back the very first layer of the psychological onion, those outward behavioral quirks. If you're someone who tends to overthink, people have probably told you it's a flaw, right? But when that overthinking is actually productive, psychologists have a term for it: cognitive reflection. It's basically your ability to just pause, question your initial gut instinct, and think a layer deeper instead of blindly reacting to whatever is happening around you. And this usually pairs up with a really high openness to experience. So if you're the kind of person who loves going down rabbit holes of random facts or exploring super complex ideas, listen, that isn't you being distracted or anxious. That's a measurable, proven sign of intellectual hunger and high-level problem solving.
And this divide in how we behave is just so stark. On one hand, you've got the loud mind. This type of mind constantly craves socializing and honestly tends to overestimate its own abilities, which is a classic psychological bias we call the Dunning-Kruger effect. But then flip that completely. You have the deep mind. Highly intelligent people actually seek out solitude. Why? Because their brain literally craves the space to process deep ideas, not just engage in endless small talk. They practice active observation, meaning they listen intently to catch the details everyone else misses. And crucially, they have intellectual humility. They actually doubt themselves sometimes simply because they're hyper-aware of exactly how much they don't know.
All right, let's move right along to Section 2, refusing the need for spectacle.
So that craving for deep thought naturally pushes the deep mind away from all the mainstream noise. Which brings up a really important question I want you to think about. Why do some minds build things while others are perfectly content just watching? Our society is completely obsessed with cheap, vicarious dopamine. People will literally debate football stats or celebrity drama for hours, getting their thrill entirely through somebody else's success. But a self-focused thinker's brain? It's just not wired for that kind of secondhand emotion. They need their dopamine to come from actual progress, personal mastery, and creating deep meaning in their own lives.
This mindset eventually leads to a really fascinating psychological state called existential detachment. This is what happens when a disillusioned realist takes a hard look at mainstream entertainment, the endless marketing, the fake brand loyalty, the absolute worship of celebrities who don't even know they exist, and they just see right through the whole shebang. Entertainment loses its grip because it's no longer helping them grow. It's the moment you realize that cheering for a bunch of strangers is absolutely never going to fix your own life. And to be clear, that's not cynicism. It's just absolute clarity.
Biologically speaking, this clarity is actually backed up by something called a low arousal preference. What this means is your nervous system genuinely performs at its absolute peak when you're calm. You naturally reject the shouting and the chaotic energy of the crowd. Instead, you're seeking out novelty and diversified stimulation, like untangling a really complex problem or designing something totally from scratch. You prefer that over just loud, chaotic noise. Again, to reiterate, this is absolutely not emotional detachment. It's high emotional intelligence actively saying no thanks to being overstimulated.
I think it all crystallizes perfectly in this one incredibly honest perspective. Why would I watch millionaires chase a ball when I'm struggling to chase my own goals? It hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Your brain simply refuses to emotionally invest in something that offers absolutely zero return on your own future.
Let's dive into Section 3, Mechanics of Elite Self-Control.
This brings us to the internal mechanics, the actual engine that drives these unstoppable systems. And the paradigm shift here is massive. Think about it. The average mind is basically a slave to the dopamine rush. It's always sitting around waiting for this magical wave of motivation to hit before actually doing anything. But here's the secret. Real discipline begins at the exact moment your motivation dies.
The elite mind has trained itself to take action completely independent of that rush. They don't wait to feel ready. They just ruthlessly protect their focus and execute.
A massive pillar of this entire system is delayed gratification. Behavioral psychology tells us over and over that people who purposefully choose long-term progress over a quick, immediate hit of pleasure end up significantly more successful. You're not saying goodbye to rewards forever, you're just actively training your brain to say, not now, later. And mastering that, it's profound. It means you aren't just controlling your calendar, you are controlling yourself, and that is where real power comes from.
Next up, Section 4, Mastering the Art of Automaticity.
So the big question is, how do these people maintain this crazy level of self-control without completely burning out? Well, they rely on automaticity. This is a state where your habits are running on pure, unadulterated autopilot. It requires zero emotion, zero hype, just pure, relentless consistency. Honestly, this level of discipline can actually seem a little scary to the average person, mostly because it completely severs the action from how you're feeling. It simply doesn't matter if you're sad, exhausted, or completely uninspired, the work gets done regardless.
And this perfectly solves the problem of decision fatigue. See, emotional reliance constantly has you asking, do I feel like doing this today? Just asking that question drains your mental battery. System reliance, on the other hand, just deletes the question entirely. Highly disciplined people do not negotiate with themselves. They bypass that whole emotional roadblock by leaning on fixed, rigid systems.
Psychologists call this framework implementation intentions. It breaks down into 3 steps. Step 1 is the initial desire. That's the vulnerable phase where you're asking, should I do it? Step 2 is where the magic actually happens. You create a fixed plan, an implementation intention. Your mindset instantly shifts to, it is time, so I do it. No mental arguments, no delays, which effortlessly rolls right into Step 3, the unstoppable habit. Zero excuses. You've officially taken a loose, flimsy plan and forged it into an unbreakable system.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, the power of silent execution.
Once you have this unstoppable system up and running, why on earth do these high performers keep their goals so incredibly quiet? Well, it actually comes down to a very real neurological trap. When you talk endlessly about your plans and announce all your big goals to the world, your brain gets a premature hit of dopamine. It literally tricks your brain into feeling like, hey, we've already achieved this. And that strips away the raw drive you need to actually do the hard work. Seeking premature praise will literally destroy your execution. So, the crucial takeaway here is the contrast between these two paths. Discipline for show is when you're posting your grind online, practically begging for applause. It's incredibly fragile. But discipline is identity. That means moving in total silence. You don't announce a thing, you just execute. And because you are executing with that deep automaticity and delayed gratification we talked about, your eventual success is going to look entirely effortless to everyone else.
You really have to realize that the scariest, most elite level of discipline isn't about controlling your time, it is about controlling your mind. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Are you going to keep playing the crowd's game, chasing cheap dopamine and cheering for strangers? Or are you ready to wake up, transform your psychology into real power, build in silence, and start playing the only game that truly matters?